In this video, I want to show you how you can quickly stop your knee from clicking. And I also want to prove to you why your clicking knee isn't because it's arthritic, there's wear and tear, or there's some structural dysfunction underneath. The exercises we're going to go through can genuinely change how that knee feels and sounds quickly, but we're also going to touch on some things that should get to the root of why your knee has begun to click in the first place. So let's get into it. So the first and most important thing to cover in this video is what your clicking knee actually means, because this forms the foundation of why these exercises that we're going to go through actually work. Now, my experience as a physiotherapist, you may feel that the reason why your knee clicks is because you've developed some wear and tear in that knee. Perhaps your knee or kneecap itself has developed a little bit of arthritis. But what's really clear clinically as a physiotherapist is that the clicking effect is just a consequence of mechanical dysfunction. Something's stiff somewhere, something's tight somewhere, there might be some weakness involved, and the way that you load up that part of your knee may have evolved to become suboptimal over time. But what's really interesting about this is that you don't need to trust me. By doing a movement that highlights your clicking, then doing these exercises and then redoing that movement again, we're looking for an instant improvement in how your symptoms feel straight away. To give you confidence that what you're doing is legitimate and that it's actually having a tangible effect on the mechanics of your leg and the likelihood that it's going to persist going forwards. So the first thing that I'll urge you to do is, before we get to these exercises, is perform a movement that you know exposes your clicking knee. For a lot of people, it's just simply squatting, it can be lunging, it can be going up and down stairs. Do that movement first, take stock of how that feels to you personally, and then come back to that exact same movement after each one of these exercises to get a sense of whether it's changed immediately, and then let me know in the comments down below. If it changes with these exercises, then it doesn't have to be there long term. It just requires you to improve the mechanics of your leg and how you load up that knee going forwards. So the first thing we want to do is probably the most obvious and potentially the most effective exercise I've seen to quickly take away the clicking from your knee. And all you need is a ball. You can use a tennis ball. As always, this is a lacrosse ball. What we want to do is we want to take that ball and we want to go looking for some of the tightness and stiffness and tender tissue on the outer corner of your thigh as it attaches into the knee. Now, it doesn't matter whether this is your ITB or your outer quad, or we go around a little bit further towards your hamstring. We're just looking for anything that you find is tight, stiff, and restricted, and potentially tender. So taking the ball, lying down on your side, we want to let the ball gently press into that part of your leg. You might need to roll over the top of it a little bit to find exactly where your restrictions might be. Now, we're not rolling up and down on the ball. Once you've found a spot that feels a little bit tight and tender for you, you can have your leg over the top here, because what we're going to do is we're going to gently bend and flex your knee and try and shear that tissue free from underneath the ball. It's a really potent and potentially tender way of doing this, but it's hugely effective. Once you've done this for 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds, should feel like it becomes a little bit more tolerable, a little bit more mobile. Then you just want to move the ball up or down and go looking for the next spot before gently trying to shear that tissue free again. So just keep chasing those areas around the outside corner of that knee for clues as to what might be tight, stiff, or restricted. Encourage that tissue to free up, and then instantly do your squats, lunges, step up, step downs again to see how that tissue feels and how it sounds straight away. So once you've spent some time freeing up some of that tissue restriction down the outside of that knee, the other thing that we can do is go after any of the general muscular tightness through the front of your thigh that inserts into that knee. Again, the idea being is that if you have some muscular tightness in the tissue at the front of your thigh, it can essentially pull a bunch of extra slack out of the knee again, fundamentally changing how you load up the structures of your knee, increasing the chances that they might click and become dysfunctional. And if you've seen a few of my videos before, you'll know that I place a strong importance on the couch stretch to try and eliminate some of that muscular tightness. The way to do this is basically you want to get your knee back into the corner of a wall or a chair and have your other leg up into this position. Now, if doing it on the floor is too uncomfortable for you, then by all means do this on a chair with your knee back into the part of the chair where the back meets the seat. It takes a little bit of the demands out of your hip, but we need to find a version of this that you can do that feels comfortable, because it's such a potent stretch and it's hugely effective for knees that click. But the idea is that keeping your back relatively straight, we want to make sure that you extend up from your hip and not your lower back. Because this can be quite a challenging stretch for so many people who are tight through the front of their hips and down through their thigh, we only want you to come up to the point that you feel very comfortable. If you can't take a deep breath, if you can't talk to someone, then you've gone too far into that exercise, and your brain and nervous system aren't going to allow your tissue to let go as optimally as it would as if you're a little bit more relaxed and feeling a bit more safe in the stretch. So just come up to the point that you feel comfortable. You'll find a decent amount of tightness to the front of that hip and down through the thigh. You can gently twist from side to side to find where the best version of that exercise is. And like most stretches, we don't just want to hold this stretch and hope for the best. We want to get tensed. We want to tense up your butt muscles. We want to tense up anything that feels tight and make that tissue work. Again, what this does is this creates a reflex in your brain that after tensing that tight muscle for 5 to 10 seconds, when you relax, that tissue will be given permission to give that little bit more, and you might find that you can instantly go that little bit further into the stretch than what you could before. And as always, keep doing this technique where you squeeze that tissue for 5 to 10 seconds, and then relax, and then go further, squeeze, relax, go further until you get sick of it or you stop making genuine change. And if you're someone who can't do this on the floor yet, but can find a version of this that feels comfortable on a chair, please make sure that at some stage you try and progress back to this point at some stage to improve how mobile you are through the front of your hips and down through the front of that thigh. Not only can this help take away some of the reasons behind why your knee wants to click, but restrictions in these areas can also have a huge impact on the function of your knee, the function of your hip, and the function of your lower back. And that's why it's such a great exercise to feel you can master, because it targets some of the real foundational dysfunction that can express itself in a whole range of different ways. And once again, once you've done that, make sure that you can then reassess your squats, lunges, step up, step downs to see how it feels and whether that clicking sensation has changed. And following on the theme of muscular stretches, we're going to move away from the thigh and we're going to head up towards the hip musculature to see if we can find anything that's restricted and affecting your knee from above. One of the important concepts to understand about any knee dysfunction is most knee dysfunction, whether it's a genuine pain, whether it is a knee that clicks or it's a genuine pain or injury that you may have experienced, the knee is a joint of consequence where most dysfunction at the knee is a consequence of something else. And if we stop looking at your knee as a knee and consider it as just one piece of the leg itself, then we can keep finding clues as to why that exact part of your knee, whether it's the outside, whether it's the front of that knee, has started to develop that clicking sensation. And one of the things that I see clinically as a physio is that a lack of hip external rotation can change the way that you load your knee up and ask certain tissues to become dysfunctional. So the exercise we're going to go through is the pigeon stretch. You can do this on any surface. If getting on the floor and doing this is too hard for you, please do it with your leg up on a chair or a table. Just find the version of this that you feel most comfortable doing, with the view that eventually it would be fantastic if you could work your way down to the floor. But essentially what we want to do is we want to come up into this position where we have your foot up. We then want to drop your knee down out to the side, and we're going to go looking for some tightness in your hip at the back. As you drop that hip down, you can gently twist from one side or to the other, trying to find which version of this exercise gives you the best access to that tightness in your hip. So for me, if I turn here, I can genuinely feel that right underneath at the back of that hip. All we want to get you to do is tense that tightness again for 5 to 10 seconds. Once you squeeze the muscle and then relax it, it'll physically give a little bit, and then you might find you can drop your leg down a little bit further than you could before. But keep chasing that tightness to make this meaningful. Give it a squeeze, make it tense, relax, let it go a little bit deeper into the stretch than you could before. Keep repeating that until you feel like you've either stopped making change or you get sick of the exercise. If you then again go and do your squats, lunges, step up, step downs, whatever it is for you, you might find that it suddenly feels a little bit more comfortable than it did before. So following on from the idea that we're not just looking at your knee when trying to solve that clicking, another piece of mechanical dysfunction that could contribute to your knee dysfunction is restrictions through your ankle joints. Thanks to a lot of the heeled shoes and thongs or flip-flops that we wear, our ankle joints can easily become stiffer and more restricted than they should be, fundamentally changing the way that our entire leg has to move in order to get around that restriction. So one thing you can do to try and change that is if you can get a power band, or any band for that matter, you want to have the band just below your ankle bones, but you want to stretch that band out as far as you feel comfortable, making sure that your feet are straight. We don't want them to turn out, keeping things in line. All I want you to do is just gently bend your back ankle just past the point where your heel wants wants to come up. The best thing about the band is that the band hooks into the ankle joint and biases any stiffness in the ankle joint capsule. So we're not talking about muscular tightness through your calf or anything around that. We're looking for that deeper joint rustiness that is a block that essentially forces your leg to completely work around it, changing the way that you load your knee and potentially contributing to that clicking. So take that ankle as far as you feel comfortable and just oscillate in and out of that end range. We want to do this for 60 seconds, 2 minutes, for as long as you feel comfortable. It's also really important that when we're doing this exercise that we're not letting your knee cave inwards, which is essentially what can happen if your knee is trying to go around that stiffness. With your feet staying straight, we want to make sure that that knee is coming out to the outside of your big toe, towards the middle of your foot, if not towards your little toe, and really plow a path through any restrictions you might find. And then continuing the same theme, once you've done this, do your squats, do your lunges, do any movement that you feel exposes that knee clicking, and see if it instantly changes with this particular exercise as well. And so the final piece of the puzzle that hopefully ties all this in together is that once you've started to mobilize some of those potentially hidden restrictions that might be contributing to that knee clicking, we want to make sure that you can understand how to then rewire your movement patterns to stop some of those things from happening again. Now, it goes without saying that any strength exercises through your quads, through your glutes, can certainly improve the function of your knee overall. And it might also be a great thing to add into your program to try and make this whole experience more robust and more longer lasting. But because we're going to practice good squat technique and squat mechanics, we're going to get a little bit of muscular strength in the bargain as well. It's really important that we understand what a perfect squat looks like, because a perfect squat highlights perfect leg mechanics. The idea being that if you can't squat perfectly, or at least in the way that's working towards being more perfect, then it might be hard for you to express that normal mechanics when doing more dynamic things like running, jumping, going up and down stairs, and things like that. So what I mean by this is, in a perfect world, we should all have the capacity to squat with our feet straight. If you prefer squatting with your feet turned out, that's fine. But if you can't squat with your feet straight and you can only squat with your feet turned out, then that suggests that you might be missing some crucial pieces of your range of motion, whether that be your ankle flexibility with that joint capsule, or your hip flexibility with some of that rotational tightness or tightness through the front of your hips. But either way, ideally we want you to feel comfortable squatting with your feet straight. The second thing is we want to create some stability at the joints in your legs so that when you squat, you're doing it from the most stable platform possible. And all you need to do for that is, if you can imagine that with your feet straight and keeping your big toes on the ground, try and externally rotate or turn out your knees. And again, it's important that you keep your big toes on the ground to stabilize that shape. But with your feet planted and creating that external rotation, what you should feel is you should feel the muscles in your hips activate, but you should also notice that the arches of your feet will also pull up and almost lock into a stable shape. And when you're in this externally rotated or active position, you should feel like you're connected to the ground better. And from here, it's really simple. All you're trying to do is just squat down as deep as you feel comfortable going without losing any of that shape. So for me, if I have my feet straight, knees out, if I keep that tension on, my knees will almost travel outside the width of my feet, all the way down to the bottom of where I can get to before coming back up again. Now, if you are someone who gets down to a certain point and you feel like you have to then lean forwards, or you feel like you have to turn your feet outwards to go further, or your knees cave in, your heels lift up, or you want to fall backwards, stop before you get to those changes in your mechanics, because you're then starting to cheat, because your body is starting to work around some of your mechanical restrictions. So if you can only do a half squat, but you can do it maintaining that perfect shape, then as your mobility and your flexibility improves, you will naturally start to get deeper and deeper and deeper until you can reach the bottom position of the squat without compensating. And clinically, as a physiotherapist, if you can express full depth in your squat with great technique, then that tells me that the mechanics of your leg are at a really optimal state. If you can't do any of that, that's not a bad thing. It just means that you have some room to improve, and it may not be a coincidence that your knee is clicking at the same time. So again, as always, I genuinely hope that was helpful. Let me know in the comments down below what actually happened to your knee after doing these exercises. I hope you're pleasantly surprised at what might be happening. And if you did genuinely find it helpful, please consider giving the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to follow along going forwards. If you are someone who has some aches and pains that you feel you need specific tailored help for, please consider booking in an online consultation with me. I'll leave a link in the description below. A lot of these exercises and these strategies are fantastic, but sometimes you might need something a little bit more specialized to your specific needs. But with that being said, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.